Hi guys, welcome back to the Improvement Season podcast. It is 2024 and it's been a couple of weeks. We missed last week because both myself and Pascal were busy in the holiday spirit.
Taking some time off.
Yeah, taking some time off and living a different kind of a little bit of a different lifestyle in some ways. Being away from home or doing activities that weren't like our usual. And I expect that was the same for everyone else. So Pascal was just telling me how he's feeling a little bit under the weather, a little bit tired and beat up. And I posted on my Instagram story yesterday just being like, man, I just feel a little bit out of sorts. And slowly, after a day of like back into usual like robot mode, usual routine, I starting to feel better. And I'm just, you know, when you're like on the cusp of like, if I let this get out of control, I'm going to like, I'll either have to deload or I'm going to get sick or something. Or if I'm really, really on top of my shit, I can skirt this and I can start being back in a productive position. And that's where I'm hoping I'm going to get to. But yeah, like I said, Charlotte's just got sick. So I'm like, I need to avoid this. I need to avoid getting sick.
Yeah. And just as a disclaimer, because otherwise someone in the comment section says once again that we are always sick and under the weather. It has been a while since we were kind of sick and under the weather. And it's just if you have like, especially kids at home, if you are in a relationship, it's much easier. Or when you are also working in an environment where you are in touch and in contact with close contact with other people, then it's much, much more likely that you're then getting sick, which isn't the case for us. We are working from at home. We are hermits in a work relationship. But when it comes to kind of still, Charlotte is dealing with a lot of people and she then probably takes it with her home. The same goes, of course, with kids and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, just not feeling 100%. I was just saying to Steve here right before the recording, here in the morning, I did my push session. I went in and there was simply no oomph behind it. I can't really describe it other than that. It's just like there was a lack of energy that I couldn't produce.
I know that feeling. It's not a nice feeling. And actually, as you mentioned people being sick, I just remembered because I went to see my family this past weekend and everyone there was like various amounts of sick.
Oh, really?
So it's like, that's probably where Charlotte caught it now I think about it. So yeah, I'm hoping to avoid that. But yeah, I know that feeling of not having oomph. It's like an easy way to describe it, at least in my eyes, is if you know you've had much less sleep than you normally have and then you go in to do a workout, and you're just like, not even a pre-workout can solve this. It's just like, I just need to get it done.
Yeah, and you're not really getting a good pump, a good connection with the movements. Performance is actually even suffering, where you're just like, where is this coming from? That doesn't make any kind of sense. And that is what I've experienced here today. But it is just what it is, right? I mean, something like this happens every now and then.
And with that, I guess you don't overreact to a one-off.
No.
You get your shit in check like you normally have it. And the next day it's probably, you're just fine.
100%. And I think that this is also where, once again, kind of experience and knowledge pays off. Because in the past, I could have easily freaked out about something like this. And then I'm trying to seek for reasons. And human psychology is just like this, that we are always seeing patterns in certain things. And we are seeing things where there aren't any kind of things. And this would have been the case in the past, right? Seeking for answers, searching for answers, finding answers, even though that these aren't really the answers, but you make it that to be the answer, if that makes any kind of sense. And now it's just, I know that something like this happens every now and then, not that often, but if it happens, it's just like, yeah, ticking off the box, moving forward. Tomorrow is another day, probably much, much better. And if not, then I'm even considering taking just like 1, 2, or 3 additional rest days, because as I already discussed before the break, I planned on extending this mesocycle anyway. And then I would just like chuck in a very, very short mini deload in order then to have the capacity of keep on pushing for the next 4 weeks, basically, before going on winter holiday.
Yeah, when is it? You actually said, is it like a month out?
No. Yeah, exactly. At the beginning of February, we are leaving
the first
on the
week
3rd.
of Feb.
Yeah, third Feb. Yeah, I think it's the 3rd of February. We are then leaving for 1 week.
I think I'm leaving the week after you.
All right, really? For the cruise, it is.
Yes,
then.
the cruise. So we leave on the 8th.
All right.
And back on the 20th, 19th, 19th.
How is it with you now already, mentally speaking? Because you said in the past that you're not 100% convinced about it. And,
To be honest, so my parents have already paid the deposit for it. So
really?
I knew we definitely had to be going. I was just like,
I didn't know that your parents are coming. I thought it's just Charlotte and you.
No. So it's this was my granddad unfortunately passed away a couple of years ago, and part of what he did was he saved a portion of money for my family to use for some way of celebrating his life. And it's also my dad's birthday around this time. And so kind of my dad was like, hey, we could go away as a family. And one easy way to do that is on a cruise ship, because you're all kind of together, but you can do your own thing. So yeah, it's my parents, my sisters are going, their kids are going, Charlotte's there. So yeah, it's the whole crew.
Funny, Steve, because that's exactly what we are doing with the winter holiday. It's each and every single year that the entire family, or what we deem as the family, so basically all of the people that you saw at the wedding celebration as well, this is kind of our family, you know. So Katie's parents come along, Katie's brother with his daughter comes along as well. We are driving or getting there via train. And Katie's parents are driving there with a car. So they are taking all of the stuff, and we're just like jumping on a train and then going down there. But it is kind of a family holiday and family trip as well. So,
Yeah. So the thing I was most nervous for was making sure that it not impact work too much, but I've got that sorted. So for the listeners, and for many of people listening, if you're an online coach, like, one, I think a lot of online coaches struggle with taking time off work. We've been now almost doing this a decade. It's like you realize you have to now and then like live your life and take time off. And so that, but I still am uncomfortable with taking more than like a week off. But the good news is I can condense both working weeks a little bit or work on the weekend. So then no one will miss more than one check-in. So I was like, oh, that's fine. Because we leave on a Thursday and get back on a Monday. So it's like, hey, I can just like condense either side. So that was fine. And the most stressful thing was sorting out something for Ada, because I said this to Charlotte, like literally like yesterday or the day before. I was like, it is unhealthy how much of an attachment I have to this dog. She's like sat on my lap, like looking me in the eye, and I'm like, why do I love this thing more than like anything in this world? This is uncomfortable. Like, this is not good, because it's gonna destroy me in like, I don't know, 5+ years when unfortunately she is no longer here. But I've kind of found a couple of places that look good for her to stay that aren't like dog kennels. It would just be awful. She'd be barking the entire time in a stressed head. So I think I found a couple of places that she'll be okay with. And I'm kind of getting my head around the whole cruise aspect and everything. So I think it will be good, because we kick off in Miami and then we're going around the Caribbean. It's going to be lovely weather. It'll be fun.
Cool. No, absolutely. And does it align with a deload, or how did you manage to play on and schedule things out?
So at the moment, probably not. The thing is, there's a gym on the ship. So part of me is like, I mean, I could deload whilst I'm there, but also there's quite like every meal is like a huge buffet. So there's going to be plenty of food, and I imagine I'm going to have some dead time during the day. So it might be quite nice to actually train hard whilst I'm on there. But I don't know exactly what equipment it has. I think I may have said before, like it's cables, some machines, but they have like a leg extension, leg curl. There'd be like a double cable stack, some dumbbells. Like we know how to get like killer workouts from that setup. So I'm not too worried about it needing to land on a deload, because I think I have the time and I have somewhere to train. I think I'll have to deload to some extent before I go, because I'm now in week 3 of this meso, and I took 3 days off on my last deload. So I haven't had like a comprehensive amount of time off for a while, like a comprehensive being a week.
I mean, I totally get that. And also this is where experience, knowledge comes into fruition and pays off, because in the past you would have probably stressed out about it, not having the right equipment on board, but now you know that you can make it work with the equipment that you have there, even if it's just minimal. And I was even considering going to get some training sessions in during the holiday. But the thing is, with snowboarding each and every single day, I do remember the last time, man, you're getting sore and you are getting fried, systemically speaking, because you're just, this is intense. And you have so much fun in the process that you don't know or notice how exhaustive it is for you, especially when you are more like a beginner. You're tensing much more. It's much more exhaustive because of that.
I can't remember. I've heard it somewhere, and this doesn't surprise me if it's true, but it's meant to be like per minute or hour of skiing or snowboarding, it's one of the most calorie intensive like exercises you can do. Like it's really like burns a lot of calories. Or maybe it's because it's like you do it for a long time, right? So it might not be per minute, but it's like as an activity, you do it for such an extended period of time. You're constantly doing something. Yeah, I can see that being exhausting.
And for me personally, I was the guy who doesn't really take any kind of breaks. The only breaks that I had was when you were on the, what is it? Kind of the lift upwards.
Yes.
You know, that was
Ski
the
lift,
only break that I had. Other than that, it was always kind of like 4, 5, 6 hours just kind of riding, you know? And then I can see how it accumulates, especially once again, when you're a beginner, you can't really stand on the board as relaxed as some other people do. And you are kind of tensed and fully concentrated so that you're not kind of course, falling and breaking some arms, which of course happened to some extent.
Yeah, I really need, it's on my bucket list. I have to go skiing, snowboarding at some point. But I can make sense. You are aligning it with the deload because of like, it's an active holiday.
Yeah.
You just can't get in good sessions when you're away. You're forced.
That's it. Absolutely. And in terms of kind of Christmas holiday, Steve, how was it for you? How was eating, training? I mean, I know the answer already. I think every listener knows the answer already. So but feel free to talk about it anyway.
Yeah, it's funny because even I think because I push myself regularly very hard, like with training, and I'm always on like a little bit of like I'm not like on a cliff and I'm close to falling off all the time, but because I'm always like really trying to push performance and really staying on top of that. And I have a very robotic routine in terms of, okay, I get my sleep. It's like I get like 9 hours in bed most nights, and I like eat the similar foods at similar times. Like my body is like a well-oiled machine. But when you put me in a different environment and my sleep gets pushed an hour later, my wake up time is an hour later, or the food sources are different, and like it starts being like, oh, this is no longer premium fuel you're putting in here. This is like you're putting petrol in a diesel car or something, and it's just like, this doesn't work super well. So, but during the time, like it was fine. So I trained, I could train Christmas Day. It was great. The gym was dead. I managed to film myself doing one set topless. That was fun. So there was no one in there for that period of time. And it was nice actually being able to like, just kind of, I shifted a lot of my habits to just doing them imbued, apart from no client check-ins, and that was basically absorbed by family time and those sort of things. And yeah, it was very low stress. I'm still gaining, so I'm on plenty of food, so it was very flexible in that regard. And I just focused on hitting protein, calories, and very estimated in terms of calories on like Christmas Day and stuff, as we mentioned in that last episode. Like I still keep an eye on it, but I'm not having my weighing scale on the table and putting every potato on there in that situation at theirs. So yeah, pretty fine. Actually driving as I don't know if we talked about it, but we're hoping to get to Bude before like 10 p.m. We ended up getting there after midnight, I think, in the end, because we ended up leaving after 6 p.m., which it's just, this just happens every year. So I should realize we need like to have a day off to get there at any earlier time. But the drive was really smooth there, which was great. And the drive back was slow, but kind of expected that. But we left relatively early, so we didn't get back super late. So that was all pretty fine. And thankfully, even because my gym in Yorkies was closed like Christmas Day, Boxing Day. So at Bude just has that gym. I can just put a code into it's open every day, so I could train there. And then coming home on the drive, I took that day off because it's 6 to 8 hours in the car. So I just have no time to be able to train. I'm not training once we get back at like 7 p.m. at night, when I've been sat all day, it's just not going to go well. And then my gym was shut again on New Year's Day, but this King's gym, which is like 20-minute walk away, was open on New Year's Day as well. So I really haven't had I thought I'd have a number of forced days off, but it just didn't happen due to kind of being in places where gyms were open and available, which is quite fun. So yeah, I mean, honestly, I think if many people were to look at me saying how I felt a bit off and like not myself, they'd be like looking at my lifestyle and being like, man, you looked super robotic during that time. And like, you were still hitting like protein, calories, 9 hours of sleep, like all of this, but just the travel, being in different locations, everything like that. And for me, I know when I eat different foods away from my usual, my gut, it just doesn't manage it well. If I'm dieting, it's not bad. But when I'm on like large quantities of food, as I've spoken to you about before, like my body just wants to get rid of it. I get like horrible bloating and shit like this. So it just doesn't deal with that well. But yeah, that's kind of how it looked. So like I felt a bit of a mess, but honestly, like things were pretty well managed over that period of time.
Yeah. So it's like you said, and I just want to point it out once again. It sounded like you were yourself in terms of the routine, but in a different environment.
Yeah, pretty much.
Right.
Exactly.
Which is good. Yeah. I mean, nothing really changed overall. I thought, same as you, that I'm having more days off, but it turned out that it was only kind of 2 days. So on the 31st and the 1st, because we left on Saturday. Did we leave on the 31st? I can't really recall. No, I think that we left on the 30th, but I still managed to get in a training session on the 30th. And I thought and expected that I have like 3 days off of the gym, but I still managed to get in a training session on the 30th. 31st, we've then been away. 1st, we came back home, but the gym was shut, and then back to normal business on the 2nd again. So in itself, I just had like 2 rest days instead of 1 rest day, but everything else stayed the same. Whenever we are going on a short trip or holiday or whatever, I'm still getting in my steps. For me, it's important to still stay active. You know, it's not that I have to do it, but I want to do it because not from a dogmatic perspective, but it makes me feel good to still stay active and not just be like, yeah, whatever. Let's just see what the day will bring. And I'd like to be active, right? And that's why also there, I was just walking through the village on both of those days, and the village, it wasn't really big, so I was crossing or going through that village a couple of times. And there were, of course, it was a very much on the countryside, and because of this there were different properties with, of course, dogs, and the dogs were more like protecting the property. And I was then walking around, what was it, on the 31st, 5:30 in the morning, and of course there's a stranger walking around, you know, all of the dogs barking at me. That wasn't the case on then the 1st because of then New Year's Eve and all that kind of stuff. But it was a little bit weird because it was also pitch black outside and I was just walking around having no idea where I am. But also there, once again, keeping up with the routine, doing the same old stuff. Also when it comes to eating, of course, not having the same foods, but getting very similar foods, because we are living in Western society. It's so easy to actually have a simplistic meal with plenty of protein and all that kind of stuff. Go to Aldi, get kind of pre-packed chicken or those kind of protein puddings and whatever. So there is no reason anymore nowadays, at least in my opinion, to not hit your protein targets. And you don't need to be adamant about it. You don't need to have like a minimum of 180 grams of protein or so, right? But getting enough protein for the day, decent amount of protein, even if it's for one day kind of 140 or 150, that probably isn't really that bad for one day out of those 365 other days or so, right? But you're still making good effort. And this allows you to not be overly sensitive to it, not stress out about it because you aren't hitting 180 grams, but you're out there and you're trying your very best to still be on it, right? And the same also then apply to Christmas holidays with eating. Did I stress about the calories that I was consuming? Absolutely not. Did I think about kind of like, I need like, I want 40 grams of now protein here in this meal? Not at all. I knew that when I have a serving of meat, I would probably have a decent amount of protein. And when I have a decent amount of vegetables alongside them with a carbohydrate source, one plate, I would probably be in a safe zone when it comes to my calories. And I don't really think about calories or macros anymore when I'm eating out. Not at all.
Yeah, funny you mentioned the steps, because that's the other beauty with the Bude gym, because it's like a 20-30 minute walk. So I walk there and back, and I'm like, I've already got such a good amount of steps, and I like it. Like Charlotte's dad was like wanting to drive me to the gym because it was like rainy and wet, and I was just like I like walking to the gym. Like I like it, kind of sets up my day nicely. So I actually ended up, I was hitting 15,000 steps, like a little bit more basically when I was in Bude. And I imagine you also have this with kids, is they force you into a bit of a routine anyway, which is what Ada does to me, because I'm like, I have to take her out in the morning, I have to take her out during the day for an hour walk. Like it ends up, and actually there's papers on this, I think something in regards to like people with dogs live longer and they're healthier. And I think it's because they force you to be more active than you otherwise would be versus any other reason.
I can see that for sure.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm totally with you. It's similar to me and Charlotte went out on New Year's, which was a nightmare, by the way. Man, no one go into London unless you want to be in London for the fireworks. Don't go into central London on New Year's Eve and expect to be able to get home, because it was just horrendous. I was getting so annoyed that like every underground station was blocked off and the police were like blocking roads, and there was just so many people. Anyway, we went to Mildred's, which is a really nice vegan place. And similar there, like I got some like vegan ramen dish, and we got like a vegan tiramisu and some vegan starters, and like I had a protein shake before I went to it, and I was just like, I saved a number of calories for this meal, and I was just like, I'm not going to stress more than I need to about that meal. And that's kind of, like you said before, it's taken us a while to get to the position of like almost being on point, like easily. And then at times like this, when we know there's no point trying to stress about, oh, how many calories are in every precise dish, how much protein, fat, carbs, like there's no point. We know within a reason that most dishes that when you eat out are going to be this amount of calories, or a ramen dish. Like that's all we need to know, and not more than that.
Yeah, and I think in that case it's also kind of having more like a sensible approach to food, instead of going what it is that we're saying is not just pick the thing with the highest amount of calories that you didn't have in ages and then not take that into consideration. That's not what it is that we are saying. But you're picking and choosing something that sounds reasonable. And I always approach it like, okay, treat yourself like an adult, or be an adult, and whatever this means. But I think that everyone has somewhat of an understanding of what that means. And that is not acting just on your impulsively, on your emotions, or what it is that you immediately desire, but more so acting reasonably, perhaps making even objective decisions, and also keeping in the back of your mind what the long-term consequences may be. Right, and you, go ahead.
I was just going to say I have a perfect example of this in terms of thinking about what you're ordering, because I said the ramen dish, and the reason I had that was they also had this thing I like. It's this vegan chicken burger with chips. But Charlotte had said ahead of time, she was like, so when we go here, I want to have like starter, main, dessert. So I was like, right, good I know that, because if I pick the freaking chips and burger, my calories are going to be way too high. So I was like, I'll pick the ramen dish. We're going to share a dessert, share some starters. It levels things out. It's like me going out with a budget, and I'm not going to overspend on one item of clothing so I can buy a full outfit type of thing.
100%, Steve. And funny enough, Katie and I, one of our Christmas presents from Katie's parents was that they were taking the kids for one day and one night. So what it is that we ended up doing, we had one day for ourselves, and it was the entire day, and we went out. And of course, we had 2 times eating out, and we had ramen at first, and then later in the day it was sushi. And do you really think that I was caring about the calories that I was consuming? Absolutely not. Do you really think that I had any kind of idea of how many calories I was consuming? No. Did I care about the protein intake that I had? No. I took a look at the menu. I made some rational, reasonable decisions about this. I picked and chose something where I knew, all right, this sounds good. This doesn't really sound too overly calorically dense. It comes with some protein servings, and I'm not overindulging. Because, for example, sushi, I think is one of those things where I can easily overeat. But what did I do? I could either go down the childish route and be like, yeah, no, I'm not having sushi that often, so I just need to make sure to eat as much as I can, or I'm going down that route. I'm still ending up having some sushi. Whether I'm now having like tons and feel bad about it afterwards, not bad in the sense of like mentally, I'm not getting to that point anymore, but more so physically because I'm so full, so stuffed, or I'm having a reasonable amount, still have the same taste in my mouth, but the portion size is reasonable, and also it comes with less consequences later down the line because I'm not over-consuming. So which one of the ones sounds best to you? Of course, the one that comes with moderation. And that's how we approached the day, and it was a fantastic day.
When you talk me through that, it really makes me think of discussions I have with clients surrounding alcohol, especially because it's this time of year. And it's that whole, like, are you drinking alcohol just to get completely trashed and then regret it the next day? And the number of people you hear being like, I'm never drinking again because they feel so bad the next day and then forget about it. But if you just go in with moderation, you get a little bit tipsy, you have a couple of drinks, you enjoy yourself the next day, you feel like maybe not your 100%, but you certainly don't feel terrible. It's kind of similar to this. It's like, be wise, be an adult, especially for people listening to this. Like, we have goals and aspirations that are above your average person who maybe doesn't care about having a whole day where they miss the gym and they just have like Lucozade and fucking takeaway to like, because they feel their digestion's off and they feel terrible and they just want to like mope in their own sorrow, whatever. Like, no offense, like, people do this. I'm just talking from experience of people I know. Yeah. Like, we don't want to do that. We want to be back and we want to be sharp and on it and progressing each and every day where we can. And maybe there's sometimes you choose not to, and that's fair enough for some people if that's what they want to do. Just know you choose that.
Absolutely. But also at the same time, does it always have to be like the craziest roller coaster ride from one extreme to the other and always back and forth? Because it's not only then the behavior that is like this, but it's also then your emotions as well. And that's something that is quite exhaustive over a long period of time. Why not then just take a smooth ride on the motorway? So, for example, I've become a proper dad, Steve, because in the past I was like, yeah, fuck yeah, let's drive fast on the motorway, you know. And now there has been a discussion in Germany since ages already of putting a tempo limit on the motorways. Because in Germany, I don't know if you are aware of that, many motorways are limitless when it comes to the tempo that you can have, you know. And there has been a discussion since ages already, politically speaking, of setting it to a limit of 130, because 130 is plenty.
Kilometers, right?
Yeah, exactly. And in the past, I was always like, 130 seems like very, very slow. But in reality, now I'm a dad. I'm always putting the limit on 120 to 130 because it's plenty. You're still getting to your destination in a very relaxing fashion. You're fast enough, you know, and the faster you go, the more risk of you crashing. And also, I know what it's like driving fast. Man, it is a crazy sensation. Your palms are sweaty the entire time, you know, and it feels weird, but it's also not comfortable over a long period of time. And it's kind of the same way there as well. Do you always want to go full raw when it comes to kind of nutrition and training, and then having risk of crashing and stopping, fuel tank being burned out and all that kind of stuff, you know? I don't see the point anymore in having those extreme approaches, and also not being able to moderate yourself when it comes to picking and choosing food or alcoholic beverages or anything like. Why do you have to then drink like 20, 10 beers, whatever, and totally get hammered? Do you want to have alcoholic beverages? Just as an example with the alcoholic beverages now. Fine, have it. Learn to only then have like 1 or 2, maybe even 3 glasses. Totally fine. But there's a huge difference between like having 1 to 3 glasses or, I don't know, 1 to 3 liters or something. Like a complete difference. And you as an adult, you have the obligation to also take care of yourself and being able to then say like, hey, I don't need 1 to 3 liters. I don't need 3+ plates of a portion size alongside them with the dessert and also a starter and all that kind of stuff. And when you're going to a restaurant, I don't need the burger. I would like it, maybe, but I don't need it. And sometimes it fits into your schedule and sometimes it doesn't. And it's your obligation to then take care of that. And be strong enough to also then say like, hey, I fancy this, but no burger in the world is worth it to make me feel bad afterwards.
Yeah, I think that it just makes so much sense. I think it's also something I really liked that you said there was that having that longer term perspective of like sometimes it doesn't fit and sometimes it is like fine to do. And I think people who are dieting get into these situations where they have this short term want to have something that is like kind of off, I don't want to call it off plan, but it would break the budget basically. And it's like, just take that second to be like, in a number of months, this diet's going to be over and I can have this thing because it's goal driven at that point. Just keep that long-term mindset.
Yeah, you know that study, right, with kids where they are being put in a room with the marshmallow study. And let's be real here, guys. And this is not meant in an offensive manner. You are not one of those kids sitting in that room really needing to eat that marshmallow. You can say no because you know that you then get 2 marshmallows afterwards. And if you think that you need to have this, or you can't really control yourself, or can't overcome immediate urges, I think there's lots of room then to work on yourself in that regard. And this is once again not meant in an offensive or mean manner. This is more a realism where it's like, this is a fact and you know it, and only because you don't want to hear it doesn't really make it less of a fact.
Yeah, it's making me think of, I see some of these dog reels where they get their dog to stay in front of like a treat and they say stay and they leave the camera filming them and walk out. Yeah. Some dogs just go for it and then you see some dogs just drooling buckets. And it's so funny. I feel like there's going to be a break at some point, Pascal.
Yes, exactly now.
Do you not see the progress you would like? Are you sick of writing your own programs? Or perhaps you need some accountability in order to stick with a plan? Then it's time to start working with us. We at Revive Stronger offer a truly personalized coaching service. You'll get more than just an email with some macros or random cookie cutter program. With Revive Stronger, you will be the center of our attention. You will receive your own fully individualized training protocol alongside a customized nutritional strategy. We created the coaching around your needs, wants, personal preferences, and your own unique lifestyle. Every single week, we delve into your program in order to make appropriate adjustments so that we get the most out of your time and the best possible outcome. We help both female and male athletes to seriously change their body composition by adding more muscle mass and decreasing fat tissue. No matter if you're a competitive bodybuilder or just want to look better, if you need help with your progress and taking your physique to the next level, our coaching is for you. It's time to make a change. Sign up today and let's revive stronger.
Do you want to introduce it now after the break here?
So we're back. I finally realized you do it every halfway through the episode every time.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think we can probably close that chapter on like Christmas and that period. And I remember at the end of the last episode, we were talking a little bit about my kind of, lessons of training and nutrition from the past year. And I think I covered most of them, but you didn't get an opportunity. So I want to give you that opportunity. If there's anything that just springs to mind immediately with your training and nutrition over 2023 that you feel like that was a reinforced lesson, that was a new lesson that I'm going to take forward into 2024.
I think it mirrors a lot of the things that you've already talked about. But also what I've learned from myself is, first and foremost, of course, constantly improving on the intent that you're bringing to the gym, and also kind of that you are probably always able to push more than you think that you can. And at some point, of course, you're pretty good and pretty close to the threshold that you always need to cross in order to actually then provide a proper stimulus. But I think that there's always room for it, because at times we sometimes get carried away. We aren't always there. We may feel as if we are present in the gym, but we all know that sometimes it's just like that typical routine. We just do it. It's an automation. And that's why sometimes we really need to reiterate that we are there in order to train and to provide a stimulus. And sometimes it's then even better to only train like 4 days per week instead of 6 days per week, because if 4 days allow you to really be focused and honed in on the training, then 6 days doesn't really make it more productive, only because it's a higher frequency or so, right? And this is a proper takeaway that I had, that I didn't just learn this year, but it has then kind of accumulated over the past years and become more and more apparent. And also that once you reach a certain level of experience, you can basically do whatever it is that you desire or want in the gym and still get a proper stimulus. And this also then applies to what it is that we've talked about in training and traveling, making it happen with different machines, different equipment. And if some equipment or machines at your current gym is broken down and can't be used, you can always then find a substitutional exercise, because the body doesn't really care whether you're doing kind of leg presses or Smith machine squats or so. And it doesn't really know what load it is that you're using. It just senses a certain resistance that it needs to overcome with force. And if you're then in the kind of relatively same repetition range for the same given RER, you're probably providing the same amount of stimulus, right? Plus minus maybe a couple of percentage points, but it's negligible, and you can't really measure that yourself. You're probably still getting tons of stimulus overall. And this makes things so much more relaxing and easier on yourself, that when you go in there and something feels off, you can easily just substitute it. Or if you're going in there and there's something that you simply don't want to do here today, could very well be, then you're just doing something differently. You know, if the last time, I don't know, lat pull downs felt super heavy and you just wanted to give pull-ups a try again, hey, go over and do pull-ups. If you have the skill set of pushing to that close proximity to failure, I think that you should be fine.
Yeah, I like that caveat of the skill set of being like advanced and knowing what you're looking to get from a session. Because I do think for more intermediate trainees, especially novice, like having set programs and structure and sticking to that is better than going a bit more flexible. But to advance as an advanced person who's been doing this a decade plus, you actually almost need that flexibility, because that actually leads to better results and outcomes. It's the more optimal path to go down. Whereas you haven't got that skill set when you're intermediate. And you probably don't need it either, because it's much easier to grow at that point. Whereas we need to be even more specific with the inputs and outputs when you're more advanced. So I think you almost need to have that. And I try and develop that with my more advanced clients, is to give them a little bit more freedom and control, but at like a snail's pace. I don't want to give it to them before they've kind of quote unquote earned it, if that makes sense.
And this shouldn't really sound as thinking that we are further advanced as many people are, because we clearly aren't, right? But at the same time, we also have to take a look at the facts. And I don't know of many anymore who are still around since like the 10 years that we have been doing this for. You know, and this is just a fact. And that's why the cohort of people that you're working with is most of the time less experienced than you. Sometimes, of course, you have people who are more experienced, but this is very, very rarely the case. Most of the time you have, or at least we are working with people who have less experience. And this is where we are then coming from when it comes to this. Also, what it is that I've learned for myself is, one more thing that I just wanted to add is what I've said doesn't really mean that you are just kind of flip-flopping between kind of exercises on a daily and also weekly basis. Of course, you're still following a structured approach, but we all know that moment where we are going into the gym, some movements simply don't really feel great, and instead of pushing through the entire mesocycle, you can easily just like substitute it and switch it in the midst of a mesocycle, which I wouldn't have done in the past, for example. One other thing that I've learned and taking away from myself, and I don't really know whether this is also then has developed over the past years and not just like 2023, is just being more willing to experiment. And this kind of ties into the other point that I've already brought up, but for example, with the lengthened partials, right? That there are so many things that you can do that being dogmatic and neurotic about training never really pays off. right? That you can do a lot of things. And this kind of is very similar to what it is that we've discussed with nutrition, that you don't have to have the knowledge about kind of the amount of protein that you are ingesting. The same goes for the training. You don't need to understand all of the small nuances. As long as you go in there, I very much focus on the exercise itself, executing it properly and crossing a certain threshold. And if you're then in the movement itself, feel free to experiment a little bit, feel things out. The body is giving you some feedback. When you are at your early stages of your lifting career, I wouldn't rely too much on those biofeedback markers because you don't have the skills and reference to categorize those. But the more advanced you get, the more of a good understanding it is that you get. Well, you're kind of a little bit more in tune with your body as well.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's the more I do this, the more I think the more and more I've always tried to be open-minded. But the longer we do this, the more and more open-minded I truly try and be to everything. Like I still have my preferred ways of doing things, but there's just the saying, many roads to Rome, many ways to skin a cat. Like it's just so true with the goals that we have as bodybuilders. Like we know with diets, like, yeah, keto can work. Like I might not like it to be like my preferred way of dieting, but if someone loves that, like I, in the past, might have been like, oh, it's suboptimal, you can't do it well. But now I'm just like, yeah, for sure you can do that. Or intermittent fasting. Again, not a preference of mine, but you can absolutely do that. And in fact, there was that new research that came out about like how much protein can be used within a single feed. And it's just like, oh, maybe that throws nutritional timing out the window a little bit for protein. Maybe I need to do a podcast episode on that, actually. I've been actually trying to get John Tromlin on for a while from NutriTactics. I have spoken to him a couple of times, so maybe I need to reach out to him, and that's going to be a good episode. Yeah. Anyway, I don't know where I was going with this, but...
No, but so for example, you've incorporated the bench incline dumbbell raises.
Oh, yes.
For example, right? Something like this. When you're going in there, hey man, even if it's not in my program and I have a lateral raise variation, it can very well be that I'm just giving it a try this time, simply because I have now the skills of listening to the biofeedback of my body, being able to also move it in a manner and pick and choosing the appropriate load from the get-go, not nailing it, but getting very close to it so that I can feel things out. Is it a good movement for myself? Adjusting on the fly and see for myself of whether it's something worth trying in the future in a more committed manner. Something like this, you know.
Did you like it? Did you try it?
I did try it, but you definitely need to get used to it. That's for sure, because it is quite different. And this is one of those where I overestimated of how much I'm able to move, because these are hard and you really need to use light loads. Like if you think that this is so XYZ weight is what it is that you can use, go down by like 20 to 40%.
Yeah. Actually, it's similar to me. I'd done back extensions for ages and I incorporated them. And I think I've just been underestimating what I can do on them. I don't know if I've ever even, because with back extensions, I'm completely going down a bit of a rabbit hole here, but I don't know what fails first. I think my back would, like if I'm going to, like I could keep going, but my back's now just doing all the work. So I need to figure that out for myself. So anyway, I'm just saying I'm continually like learning as well with when I incorporate new movements that I haven't done for a while.
No, absolutely. Are there any kind of other things that came to your mind ever since we've talked last week that you've learned and were some takeaways for you?
I can't even remember what I said the last time, so I'm going to say not really. But I think that being open-minded, not dogmatic, is just so important. And like results speak for themselves. There's so many people within this space doing a variety of different things and seeing great results. And if someone enjoys that, if it's their preference, then like have at it. Like I'm so much more willing to listen to someone's preference and what they enjoy and will consistently do than like in my head, it's optimal because X, Y. I guess actually that's the other thing. I've become much more skeptical of like hard rules of, if there is not much data to support some of these, I guess, more fringe ideas, I'm much less willing to just do it just in case. And I'm like, well, what are the big pitch items the like incredibly evidence-based. Okay, I'm progressing. I still can perform. I'll keep going rather than like arbitrarily cut myself short here. Or that's one where it was like, hey, don't introduce a new exercise within a mesocycle. And I'm like, I get why that became like an idea that I held strongly to. But when I tried it myself and like experimentation, so I try it myself because maybe I was forced in one situation because the machine was broken. It was completely fine. So, and then similar to you, I think I even said it as one of my lessons, like pushing your limits, testing yourself. That's part of the experimentation, I think.
Yeah. So in general, as a conclusion, now that you are bringing it up, it's if you really want to simplify things, less strong beliefs, less giving fucks. Right? And I mean, there has always been a time where I was not really caring about what other people are saying and stuff. That doesn't mean that I'm disregarding, for example, other people's experiences or so. That's not what I'm saying. But more so when it comes to also what it is that you should feel, for example, or what you should do. I've never cared because I can actually then go in there and test things out for myself, and either it works or it doesn't, And sometimes you yourself as an individual, you are not in the right position to give things a proper try because you lack the experience or lack the knowledge. And that was certainly the case for certain lifts in the past where I wasn't ready for the lift itself because I haven't developed the skills. And then you just come back in a couple of years from now. Same goes also for certain methodologies and ideas about nutrition, for example. I think that the idea about intuitive eating, I think it's a great idea, honestly, but I don't really think that it's applicable for the vast majority of people out there. However, I think I'm now at a point where, and the same goes for you, Steve, where I could easily just more so do kind of and approach it from an intuitive eating perspective rather than anything else, and still meet all of my macronutrient requirements to a very reasonable extent. But this has been in the making for years. And then you could always make the argument of like, is it truly intuitive eating? Because it's more like a skill that has so much ingrained that you're just applying it in a hidden format or subconsciously. Kind of
mindful eating instead of intuitive, because I guess...
I mean, this is what I deem as intuition, or what many people would deem as intuition. And I don't know in what kind of book it was at one point. They brought up the example of a surgeon who has done a procedure since like 20 years, has done it like thousands of times. If he then goes into the ER and is then preparing for that thing or that operation, it doesn't really require him to be as focused as other people anymore. Some things just come intuitively, and some decisions also come intuitively. It's not that he is then in his mind thinking like, yeah, now I need to do X, Y, Z. It's more like intuition because he has done that exact movement, that exact path, so often that it's more like an intuitive approach to it instead of anything else. Or when it comes to making a decision on the fly, you are now, someone is getting into your ER, it's an emergency, and you have to make a choice right now. If you've seen a certain thing or accident like thousands of times, you just act upon intuition because it's kind of based on experience.
Yeah, I think of the immediate thing I was thinking about was like coaching. Like, I can so much more quickly look at my spreadsheets and know what I'm looking for and make answers, and because it's based off that experience and intuition. Or similar to training, like, with this dumbbell lateral raise, there's the like certain cues and setup that you've kind of learned from maybe seeing a video, but in the moment what you're really trying to feel and look out for, so you can kind of make it work for you in that situation. So I completely agree with that. And actually, I think that's one thing I mentioned in terms of takeaways from the year is like, really don't discount experience. Like, I just think experience within this, like for people who've been doing this a long time, have worked with a lot of people, there's just something to experience that, again, that is a big part of like evidence-based practice, I think.
And it's so unfortunate because young people, and I say like young people as if I'm just that old geezer or so.
We're getting old, man.
yeah. But young people will never understand and appreciate the value of experience. They won't. They can't. Right? Because they can't. How do you value experience, you know?
Yeah. It's a tough one. That's like, I never like respect your elders. I actually made a thread about this. I was like, I never really understood respect your elders. I was just like, they're old. Yeah. What, like, is that why we're respecting them? Because they're older than me? But now I'm like, I get it. Like they've lived a life. They've gone through so much. Now I really understand where respect your elders comes from, because you cannot, like, experience is priceless. So I think, like, again, some of these old school bodybuilders and everything, like, I used to just poo-poo, like, whatever. Like, they didn't really have much to teach me. But actually, they have years in the trenches doing this shit. So it's just not to weigh too heavily on, like, science or on them. It's like, okay, like, again, I've come more to this middle ground. And yeah, I now understand, like, I mean, not like respect your elders for sure, but don't take everything they say for gold. But some stuff is like, I think there can be some valuable lessons that you can't learn from like a scientific paper or from a year of lifting. It's something that takes decades.
Yeah. And this kind of brings me to one of the points that I didn't bring up, but this has also then developed over the past years. And this is looking less at kind of minor details, putting less weight into minor things, minor occurrences, but more so focusing on the bigger picture, not even thinking too much, to be honest. Because if you've been doing this in such a long time, then you're getting into an automation as well. And then you don't have to stress about those small minor things, because they don't really make up a lot of your work and a lot of your progress. And this kind of ties into what it is that I also said in giving less fucks. So I find myself, especially as a coach nowadays, saying more and more often, like, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
Honestly, there are so many things, so many questions, so many, which are coming from a curiosity perspective, totally fine, you know? But when it comes to the application-based perspective, doesn't really matter to the vast majority of people. There are so many other things that need to be optimized first before then ever even coming slightly to considering those kind of small minor details. For example, when we're just bringing up nutritional timing, doesn't really matter for like 99% of the people, unless you're always going down the extreme end of the bell curve, of course, right? But we are not talking about extremes. We're talking about kind of averages, right? And most people, they just need to learn to lift properly, right? So pushing yourself on a consecutive basis, often enough in an adequate manner, then focusing on just recovering well, and then eating properly. And those, just the implication itself, of course, is always up for interpretation on the individual. So what does adequate eating mean? All that kind of stuff, you know. But once you're getting to that point, once those things, the boring things, are ingrained, you then really come to the realization that those other things are less meaningful.
Yeah, and I think the easy example of that is like supplements. These are the minutia things are like supplements. You wouldn't know if you wouldn't feel or notice the difference with having them or not. And I don't like to, and I think supplements is maybe not always the best example, because I do think there are like creatine. Maybe it adds, I don't know, this 0.5% of additional muscle every year. I'm just a random amount. Over 10 years, that's a small amount of additional muscle that you've gained. So the little things definitely add up, but they just do not like miss the forest for the trees. Get the cart before the cart before the horse. You need the horse first, because then you're not going to get anywhere. You need to have the big picture things, and most people don't have those nailed.
That's exactly it. And we know, because we are coaches and have been doing this since such a long time, and we know what the vast majority of people in our circle, at least, we are, of course, suffering from observational bias. But from what it is that our circle is going through and what it is that we are seeing, is that training, for example, pushing to the right given area is probably the biggest challenge of them all for the vast majority of people. Or just swinging around the weight and not optimizing that, doing junk volume, kind of something like this, you know. But it's never really like, okay, the thing that is holding me back is that I'm not having creatine. or the thing that is holding me back is that I'm eating 70 grams of fat instead of 50 grams, and I need to now up my carbohydrates. That's never really what holds you back. Never, you know? And it's also not that you need to have an accumulation of those smaller things that then hold you back. Like a combination of like, it's creatine and XYZ. No, you would, if you don't really see the progress, it's not because of those minor details. It's always the bigger things. Always.
The bigger things drive the progress for everyone. So even if you if you're advanced and you're not doing the advanced things like taking creatine as something higher up on that kind of priority or lower on the priority list, if you didn't take creatine, you'd still see great results. But if you didn't get great sleep, you're not getting great results.
That is the thing, right? And then you can even make the argument of like, okay, and if you are taking care of the bigger things and you're seeing the progress that you would like to, does it then really matter whether you're taking the creatine or not? Probably not, you know, unless you want to become something great. But most of us, it's enough that we are becoming great for ourselves, for our standards.
And actually, I think creatine maybe isn't the best example because that's probably something easy for people to implement. But there's some of those minutia things. I can't think of one off the top of my head. Or it could be some like really complex morning routine where it's like, oh, I need to go outside, get sunlight in my eyes, ground, then come back, do breath work and meditation. And then I can't have caffeine until after a certain amount of time because it's ill-advised, whatever, you know.
It kind of brings up the thing about, and you've probably seen it at some point, 7 habits all billionaires are doing. Some shit like this, you know. This is once again also a very much cherry picking because there are probably other billionaires or millionaires that don't do that kind of shit, you know. Then also at the same time, do you really have an idea of whether they are doing exactly this on a day-to-day basis and all that kind of stuff? And also, it's not that they've become billionaires or millionaires because of those habits. Because they probably had a great idea, been at the right time, right place, and there was a niche, maybe a market for it, and they've been able to develop that. And not those 7 fucking habits of like getting up at 5 in the morning, taking a cold bath, throwing some piss in your face, whatever. It's probably not that, you know? And it's kind of the same then in principle when it comes to kind of training and nutrition. It's not those kind of smaller habits. They can add, of course, certainly. I'm not disregarding that. But this isn't what really makes the difference.
No, the small specifics, definitely not. It's the big rocks for sure. We're coming near the end. I don't know if there's anything we want to close this episode with. It's kind of like a little bit of a roundup of our Christmas and New Year's lessons from 2023. And I guess some advice going into 2024, which is unsexy, but it's like those fundamentals, keep those solid, and then experiment here and there.
And based on what it is that we just mentioned, we are getting older. And as you heard here on this podcast, appreciate the elders and their knowledge and their experience, and we may deteriorate when it comes to our looks, but our knowledge and our mind is just sharpening.
I actually I heard it somewhere recently, just because we talked about hair several times. It was something, I think it's like past the age of 35 or something like that. That's when you really slow the recession of your hair, and losing hair, it tends to really slow down. Apparently. So I asked.
So I'm fine.
You might be all right.
All right.
You might be all right.
Hey, great news.
I asked Alexa when's the best time to get a hair transplant. She said between the age of 30 and 40. So I'm like, I'm considering it at some point.
I heard something similar that the earlier you get it, the more likely it is to then also stay on your scalp. You know?
Oh, really?
Yeah. I could be completely wrong, and maybe I dreamt it, and this is where I'm just thinking that someone told me. Could very well be. So
I know
for all of the guys listening and having done kind of research in that area, please correct me if I'm wrong.
I just know the issue with doing it too soon is that it can continue to recede, and then you have like a gap.
That's true.
not great.
Yeah, that's true. But I mean,
dear.
yeah, then it's more so for cosmetic reasons. Because I told you about that one guy I went to school with. Mark was his name. I'm not spoiling now his last name. I don't. I think it's unfair. But he was very much an unlucky soul. Buddy, he was already receding at the age of like 14, 15, 16. That's some tough shit, man.
Yeah.
Because in those years, you're already so insecure. You're trying to find yourself, right? You want to be attractive for the other sex, or maybe the same sex could also very well be. And then already having a receding hairline, man, this is tough.
Not ideal. Actually, on the, because now this is so ridiculous and off topic. My Instagram comes up with like hair stuff all the time because obviously I've clicked on shit. And I see guys like, basically, they get they're receding a lot. They shave it all off, and then they get what's it called when they get like a fake head toupee, on top. Like they get, and I'm like, wow, actually looks really good. But the other day on the underground, some guy got on, and I was like, this guy has a really full head of hair, and he looks quite old. And then I looked at it, and I was like, he's got like a toupee just on the front here, because I looked at like the hairline, and I was like, that doesn't look normal.
But mate, there are some toupees which are freaking amazing and quite expensive, I would assume, because there was not that long ago the Bachelorette on here in Germany. She was very pretty, by the way. I think that, in my personal humble opinion, she was the prettiest bachelorette there ever was, and also she was quite cool, to be honest, and she was suffering from the same condition as Jada Pinkett Smith.
Alopecia
could very well be, I don't know, right? Where she's just kind of losing her hair as a female, and she had kind of a toupee, and you couldn't really tell. Of course, that was television. It could very well be that live it looks awful, but I would very much assume that there are toupees out there that are you couldn't really tell the difference.
I think, like you said, they're expensive, and you have to get them redone like every 2 weeks or something.
Oh, really?
Then having your scalp covered for 2 weeks, and like showers and everything. I don't even know how that all works.
Neither do I.
This is why coming back to hats and shaving the head is just a easy man solution.
Man, it's like I said in the past. As long as I can push it as far back as possible and getting a receding hairline, perfect, right? When I'm kind of turning 50, mate, no one gives a shit. Then I'm just like an old wise man with a bald head, right? Such as other wise, very successful people, Steve Jobs. Who else is there? I don't know.
And actually, this is something I heard recently, was the field of cosmetics is advancing at a ridiculous rate. So it's like something like 10 years ago, it was like taboo to get your hair colored, even as a woman, I think. And now it's normal for anyone to get their hair dyed. So it's like, what's going to happen?
I can see that also due to social media, right? When it comes to kind of how many people, especially in their younger years, are already getting some kind of cosmetic procedure, it's crazy. So from a moral perspective, I don't really like that trend, because I think that many people in their early 20s, when I look back and think about how immature I was in my early 20s, that's not to say that everyone is like this, that's for sure. But I don't really think that a lot of people are having the level of maturity to go through cosmetic procedures like this, the severity that many people are going through. And especially when you're just taking a look at Instagram and all that kind of stuff, when you're kind of 21 and you have done everything already, lips, tits, ass, I don't know, wrinkles, whatever wrinkles aren't even present in your face, all that kind of stuff, you know. I don't really like this, but it's clearly a trend that cosmetic procedures have skyrocketed. And I'm not then surprised that other kind of medical products or services have also then increased alongside with that.
Yeah. And on that note, I'm going to end again on experience. And I think what you're coming to was, if you need coaching, if you're a bit younger, if you're in your 20s and you're like, hey, I don't want to spend my money on cosmetic surgery, I want to spend it on coaching, which is going to improve my cosmetics, my own cosmetics, I don't know. Yeah, anyway, going to the gym and, you know, build muscle, you'll look great. Yeah. You'll have less wrinkles, I imagine. And we can help you. So remember
the Ninja Turtles? they had an old teacher. Remember also Karate Kid? He had an old teacher as well. And every martial arts teacher and master in television is old. Remember this when you're then approaching us for coaching. You can learn a lot when you are coming over. I can promise you this. Cheers, guys.
This is now making us sound really old. Guys, thank you so much. Cheers. Have a great 2024. Stay with us, and we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah.
Losing weight fast while maintaining muscle mass. Sounds too good to be true, doesn't it? It isn't though. It's reality and we know how to do it. And we will help you achieve this. The Minicut Movement is an 8-week fat loss program to make you lose a huge chunk of fat while maintaining muscle mass at the same time. We will support you from the beginning to the end so that you see the results you would like to and come out of it much stronger. You'll receive a fully automated spreadsheet that is based on your nutritional needs. You can choose between 6 different male and female training templates. Over 30 videos will guide you through each and every single step of the Minicut so that you're getting the most out of your journey and that you always know what to do. But the best thing is that you can start whenever you want. The Minicut Movement is open 24/7. So if you want to learn more or you're ready to sign up, hit the link in the description below. So let's revive stronger together.